But the question is, in the absence of some political framework जो कि available हैं, मिसाल के तौर पर political consultations का process है, economic cooperation का commission हमारे साथ है, but these even we could not hold these meetings during the last 7-8 years. So do you think, I mean, how do you look at the, because you are uniquely placed, because you're half Bengali, your mother was Bengali, so you can, being Pakistani or also a Bengali from your mother's side, you can give us perhaps a more realistic perspective as to how to take this relationship forward. Because as I mentioned earlier, we do not see the ice was broken when the two prime ministers spoke, but then we do not see much, I mean, things have not been able to be pushed forward. So how you look at the prospects? Can we expect Sheikh Hasina, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, to visit Pakistan this year, or our Prime Minister visiting Bangladesh this year, in order to break that psychological barrier which is there? Or, I mean, if these visits can take place without, because this issue of apology keeps recurring in one way or another. So what are your experiences tell, and how we can, what would you suggest, what could be a realistic way forward? Floor is yours, Mr. Sehgal.
Excellency, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to this very important webinar. And I would start with the fact that I think Ambassador Fauzi Nasreen has very well laid out the institutional framework for a way forward. But as you have rightly said, before we move forward, we have to really repair the damage of the past, right? And make a foundation from where we can go forward. Now, you have already said about my background, but very important thing you left out of that background, which a lot of people do not know. In fact, my father raised the 2nd Battalion of the East Bengal Regiment in 1949, right? And he raised it as a major, and then commanded it later on from 1956 to 1958. But more importantly, he was the head of G2 Intelligence 14 Division during 1954 and 1955, when the Jukto Front was this thing, etc. And G2 Intelligence 14 Division was virtually the ISI of that time. In everything, there was no ISI at that time, so we used to do that. So I have studied. I went through. I was mainly through Our Lady of Fatima Convent in Humilla. Came to Lawrence College. Went back to Notre Dame College. Played for Dhaka University, cricket and athletics. So, but more importantly, the fact of the matter remains that there is a tremendous amount of goodwill in Bangladesh for Pakistan. Now that goodwill has been suppressed very deliberately after 2008, right? Because we understand that the entire narrative was being changed. What happened between 1977 and 2008 was a gradual lessening of, tensions. People used to reach there were many flights, so you never used to get seats on the flights, whether it was Biman or whether it was PIA. Right, you never used to get seats, and then suddenly this dies down. Fortunately for me, my military this thing came in handy in the sense that the people who ruled Bangladesh up to 2000, in fact 8 and between Khalda Zia, in sent this General Ziaur Rahman was one of my father's adjutant. General Shad was my father's adjutant. Right? Shafiullah, who was our first chief of army staff, was my father's adjutant. I was General Shah's adjutant. I was Ziaur Rahman's, he was my company commander, right? So we had a very close relationship, in that sense that I could talk to them about many things which I will not be able to even say publicly, right? But the fact of the matter remains that between 1977 to 2008, there was a tremendous relationship. And let me give you one example of that. I accompanied Nawaz Sharif to Dhaka it was 1998, when we went there. And it was, I think, the D8 meeting or something like that. and this was at that time, Hasina Wajid was actually the prime minister at that time. You cannot imagine, he was holed up in the Intercontinental, and he had been told, given advice that there's a cricket match between India and Pakistan going on, which he was very keen to see. And he was advised not to go and see it because there would be slogans raised against Pakistan. So Mr. Sattarji, who was the foreign minister at that time, he called me. He said, come up to the 4th floor of Sonargaon. And I went up there. He said, the Prime Minister is very anxious to see the cricket match, but he's been told this. So I said, sir, I think this is not correct, because what I know, is not correct. So anyway, it was Friday. We went and said a prayers at, that airport mosque, and then informed Hasina Wajid that he's coming. This is the old Dhaka Stadium. And the old Dhaka Stadium, it was really a bit of a mess going up the stairs. And when they used to go around the stadium to get to the VIP, this thing, you used to go behind the girls' enclosure. And as we walked past, the girls turned around with the Pakistani Prime Minister, and most of them had crescent and star on their cheeks. And I tell you, Mia Nawaz Sharif was stunned. He stood there. He just was stunned because, he was this thing. And then when he went in, Hasina Wajid greeted him. The entire stadium rose up to greet him. And as luck would have it, Amir Sohail and Saeed Anwar were going mad at that time, hitting the Indian bowlers all over the place. I'm just telling you something which is nothing. Flash forward. I used to go and lecture in the NDC, in the National Defense College. And, every year I used to go there and I have a good contact with them. But I could see after 2008, the drastic change. I did lecture for 2 years in the NDC after that. Till 2010 was probably my last lecture, but then I was stopped from lecturing there. And then, luckily for me, I was a director of Bank al-Falah, and Sheikh Nayan decided that I should look after Bangladesh because they had made some wrong investments there in bank and all that. And he wanted to pull out. And I told him, I said, no, sir, don't pull out. This is a great opportunity. We opened up more banks, we more branches rather. We opened up in Mirpur, we opened a branch in Chittagong, etc., all over the place. Bangalore. Now, let me tell you, I want to ask, I'm not going to go into various things. I'm going to start from threat perception. When you have a neighbor, right? When you have a neighbor, and if during 1971, the maximum Pakistan Army was 3.5 lightly equipped divisions, ad hoc divisions, which did not have the armor complement, the artillery complement, the engineer complement, and a lot of other, they were short of manpower. And they were beefed up by civil armed forces and police, 11,000. So out of the 35,000, 11,000 were civil armed forces. That is 3.5 lightly equipped divisions. What is the threat perception that Bangladesh should have 10 divisions today? Ask yourself this question. Let's not go down there. What is the threat perception that Bangladesh should have 10 divisions today? And 6 of those divisions are within 10 miles of the Indian border. 6 of those divisions are within 10 miles of the Indian border. Now, these are things that you should think about. I think, people do not know this, but when people within the Bangladesh cabinet came and started, Bangladesh used to send a lot of army officers and naval officers to Pakistani schools, army schools, Air Force school, Air War College, Naval War College and all. It had stopped after 2010, right? Now, let me tell you, there are more than 30 officers from Bangladesh. And this is because of Hasina Wajid. She overruled everybody, right? She overruled everybody. I'm being very frank about something. It's not because of us or what we have done. Thank God for Modi. Thank God for him. Actually, whatever we today are, the relationship with this thing was with Modi, and what they have done in Assam, declaring 1.6 million Bangladeshis alien, and then they're Ajit Shah calling them termites. I mean, the word she used was termites. They're termites, right? Now, my feeling is very clear. I don't want to go and say to in Bangladesh, I want to pass part of Pakistani flag, or I want to do this, I want to do that. Yes, a sovereign country. And what Ambassador Fawzi Naseem said, the word was non-interference. The word was sovereignty. We accept it. It's a fact of life. And we accept it and we go on from there, right? You know, there have been bad things done, but bad things have been done by both sides. You know, if a lot of Bengalis in Bangladesh died, a lot of Biharis and West Pakistanis also died. You know, I'm a witness to that. I was a helicopter pilot. I was the pilot with the Commander Eastern Command, Lieutenant General Sardar Yaqub, for some time. You know, before I came away on 12 March 1st and then went back. And then, of course, things were different. But my point is very simple, that we have only got, I think we have a genuine friendship again growing. And we should let it naturally evolve. We should not do any chest beating. We should not think that this is a relationship which is against anybody. We have complementary economies. I tell you, I've been telling for a long time, for some time, Satyajit Saab had told me when Nawashi had come back to Park in 2013, 14, that talk to them. And I talked to Mr. Gohar Rizvi, who was very close to the Prime Minister at that time. You know, at that point of time, he used to come to Karachi because he was director of Habib University, right? So I talked to him and, you know, I really proposed to him. I said, you know, what difference does it make if you don't have visas and no tariffs? Don't have visas, don't tariffs, right? Right? How many people will come away from Bangladesh? Number one. Number two, I said we have a responsibility from the stranded Pakistanis, those people who call themselves Pakistanis, right? Still, after 2-3 generations later, they've been born, so their grandchildren were this thing, but they still call them. Similarly, we have 1.6 million Bangladeshis in Korangi, Landi, etc., all over, mainly in as servants and all. They are Pakistanis. They've been here, they've been born, etc. Their parents were here, etc. We should accept them. If you could accept 3 million Afghan refugees, right, who never are these things, etc., we should accept them. We should take steps that are meaningful, positive, etc. And let me tell you, the dialogue is going on. I'm not privy to the dialogue, so I cannot the things said, but the dialogue is certainly going on. Like Ambassador Fawzi Naseem said, there's exchange of letters, exchange of telephone calls. I foresee, I may be totally wrong, you know, but I see Hasina Wajid coming this year to Islamabad to open the Bangladesh diplomatic mission in Islamabad, which has just been built, which is just ready, right? So I think that may be a very nice thing, etc., to go forward. My feeling is very simple, that, you know, we go back. Let's go back. And you said something very nice about a gateway, and again, it was repeated by Ambassador Fawzi Naseem. You know, people do not know. In 1946, A.K. Fazlul Haq, Sarwardi, and Abul Hashim, they came to the Qaid and said, Qaid, that, you know, we could actually have the entire Bengal and Assam with us, right? We could do that, right? So, you know, they thought at that time, and today, look at it today. There is the entire Assam, is in various stages of revolt. Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur, Bodoland, Assam itself, right? So my point is very simple, that this is natural. Bangladesh, like Pakistan, let us say geopolitically or geo whatever, we are a great corridor. We are a part of the Eurasian corridor, where we are part of South Asia, we are part of Middle East, North Africa, we are part of Central Asia. Similarly, Bangladesh. If you look at it, it's a conduit for China, if you look at it, etc. And Ambassador Fawzi Naseem talked about water issues. We have very serious water issues on which both the countries are one. You know, if the headwaters, you know, India is trying to stop the headwaters in between, and with the result that you have a problem in because the Farka barrage problem has never really been solved, and similarly here in Pakistan. So, and luckily for us, beyond that, China is let us say the spigot beyond that, beyond the Himalayas. You understand that this thing. The entire delta is comes out of Tibet and Schengen province. So I think we have with us a tremendous opportunity to build the relationship on very sound footing. And let me tell you, I commiserate with Ambassador because he saw the good times, in 2002, and he saw the bad times in 2016. Right? I agree because it was very difficult. But the fact of the matter remains that the ambassador there is at home. Our ambassador there is at home. He feels at home because there are so many people who come to him. The goodwill is there. So why don't they permit? Why don't they permit flags into the cricket stadium? Why don't they permit flags into the cricket stadium? The reason is whenever there's a Pakistan match with anybody in any of this thing, etc., Pakistani flags have independence. And whenever there's an India-Pakistan match, so it is beyond question. So because of that, they banned the national flags in the cricket. So this is the only country in the world where they've done it, etc. But I think that instead of being India-centric in our approach, we should look back in the fact that we were the finest experiment in nationhood in history, the finest the thing that people with different cultures, people with different backgrounds, but had a common Muslim heritage, came together and stayed together. Ambassador, I want to give you one last, this thing. I was a young officer in 1965 and 1966. One of my first things in internal security was, myself, we had General Shad, who was major at that time, took a company of three platoons. One was commanded by me, and the other was commanded by Naseem, who was about one course junior to me. He later became the chief of army staff in Bangladesh. We were posted outside the Dhaka University because there were Tashkent riots. The Bangladeshis were protesting, why did we sign Tashkent? There were Tashkent riots in Dhaka and Chittagong and Khulna and Rajshahi, right, and Sylhet, but there were no riots in West Pakistan at that time. And 6 years later, we were in Pakistan and Bangladesh. So it is something that I think we now need to not forget the past. We should never forget the past. We must learn from the past, make sure that we remember the past and remember all the horrors of the past. But remembering the horrors of the past, build up a future that is based on the vision that the Muslims of South Asia had to be together, right? And I think I'll put you last one thing. The biggest deterrent to genocide of Muslims in India are the Pakistan and Bangladesh armed forces. Biggest deterrent to genocide in India. Because as long as Pakistan, Bangladesh armed forces, and with the threat of China coming from them, India will always be the thing. But let me tell you, as far as the BJP ideology is concerned, it is very much on the cards. We should not kid ourselves that, okay, there's just rhetoric, right? They have been practicing it. They have been, they have been the thing. So we have a common, let us say, agenda. And that agenda is to protect the Muslims of the subcontinent. And that can only happen if Pakistan and Bangladesh have a very strong relationship with each other. Thank you, Doc. I think more and more Hasina Wajid is becoming her own master. I agree with you that she had been under the influence and obligation for some time. But as Bangladesh has come up economically and politically, because in the sense within Bangladesh, there's a lot of resentment against India because of Assam. Right? And it is the same Hasina Wajid who, the Indians wanted to put a canal across from West Bengal to Assam, cutting across Bangladesh. She's the same Hasina Wajid who said no to it, right? That thing, etc. I think at the end of the day, we must remember that, and I think we should, we are, in fact, let us say we have gone through this process. The Bangladeshi is fiercely independent. Yes, for some time he was given the thing, etc. But as they've come up in the world, And as China has played a much more role economically, right? And that has helped Bangladesh becoming more and more independent. Where I agree with you that it's not going to happen suddenly, right? But this process has started, and this process will speed up. This process will speed up, right? And I think part of that process is because of the exchange of that we can actually speed it up by exchange of students, like academics, trade people, going back and forth, etc. And then I think the time has come to take out of the box measures. The thing, etc. Even if we say no visas and no tariffs, no visas, how many Bangladeshis will come to Pakistan? How many Pakistanis will go to Bangladesh in any case? But the point is that free travel, which was psychologically stopped by the Ganga incident, by the Ganga, when India in 1971 maneuvered to that Ganga incident, stopped the overflights. And actually the overflight started between 1978 to 2008. There was a huge this thing, etc., Biman and PIA. But I think, Ambassador Saab, with all due respect, Ambassador Fizan has been in Bangladesh at about the worst time, in the second time that he was there, which, they were isolating the embassy. I know I was stopped from, from lecturing in NDC, which I used to lecture every year, right? But they could not stop me because of a director of Bank of Flas. I used to travel till 2016, 2017. I used to travel quite a bit. But my own, first of all, it's a gut feeling. Number two, that gut feeling is based on certain facts which I do not think it's in interest either of Pakistan or Bangladesh to talk about them publicly. I very positively that this thing, the Pakistan-Bangladesh relationship, will grow very rapidly, grow very rapidly. And I think that Indian influence that is there is, as it is fading out slowly, right? And it is a fact of life that the people resent the Indian tutelage there. They do not like it. People that you were in contact with during your time and all, they may be talking something else publicly, but when they met you, during social gatherings, all, they had a different opinion. And you said that in your presentation, that I feel that this relationship will grow rapidly. We have to be careful. We have to be careful that we do not try and become the older brother again and, patronize. Our problem was, the elder brother thing, patronizing, etc., etc. Again, we had morons in our thinking process in national security. The first moron thought about the defense of the East lies in the West, right? That was, I think, there was nothing more moronish than this. That you put 15 divisions in West Pakistan and put one division in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan, right? The second moron, of course, we are going through it, who thought about that Afghanistan gives us strategic depth, right? So I think once we get over these morons, who have actually been governing our national security due to their warped thinking, and I think we should go forward. We should look forward as to what the great economic opportunities, leave aside the political opportunity, the great economic opportunities. We have complementary economies, jute bags, tea, etc. These are things that can come from there. We must raise the issue of the atrocities that were committed on non-Bengalis in 1971, right? And this is something that is actually, something that we must raise with them constantly, because this is something that has not been done really in the way we should have. But I do not see any harm in apologizing, right? Because I mean, if the semantics of an apology can carry the relationship forward, right? Why should we stand on our things that we've gone past that stage? The apology has been delivered again and again. By the way, I was personal witness to the apology being delivered by Nawaz Sharif when he went to the memorial, and laid a wreath at the.
Even President Musharraf regretted the events.
Regretted, and he also, both of them laid flowers at the grave of the unknown soldier, in Savar. etc. I was with Nawaz Sharif at that time when he went there, and General Musharraf also went there later. So I think we are beyond that. We should not have any hang-ups. If they want an apology, let's give them an apology. But at the same time, we must raise the subject of all the atrocities committed on non-Bengalis, because that is something that we should not let go, because that, etc. Now, as far as the die-hard Awami Leaguers are concerned, I agree. They will never let go. It's the same thing here. You have the die-hard, if you have the die-hard religious maniacs running around, the thing, etc. You have die-hard in every place. But those die-hard are few and far between, right? They can, let me tell you, they can go and create a mass movement in Dhaka because they just have to take people out of Shahbag Hotel, right, and block up the road. And if they have 1,000 people that from this side and that side, the roadblock will add up 100,000 people in no time at all. And then you can say, oh, mass. That's not a big deal in that sense. But in that sense, that they could do this thing, etc. Why were more when these things happened in Kashmir? There were more demonstrations in Bangladesh than in Pakistan. Right? So what would they have in Kashmir except common that we are Muslims together? I think we should not be hung up on this apology thing. If they want an apology, let's give them an apology. Right? If they want it again, give again. As many times as they want, we can give it. Let's get on with the relationship beyond the apology.
Okay. Any other thought, any other comment? Because we would like to now conclude this webinar. If anyone wants to something to
I think, first of all, Ambassador Vas, let me first commend you on having this webinar. And I think, we need to have more of this. This is a very important subject. Pakistan and Bangladesh. It's a very important subject. I think we need to know of this. And I'm going to come back to you, and I have a proposal which we'll carry for Karachi Council for Foreign Relations with the Institute of Strategic Studies, and we may combine with you to do something maybe in Davos,